Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a happy Diwali. It's nice to be here and telling you about the book that I'm going to do. Well, the book that I'm going to take is called How the World Works. It's by this person called Noam Chomsky. I don't know if you would have heard of him, but he has been said to be the most cited living author of all time. And the New York Times grudgingly calls him the most important intellectual alive. This book that I have right now is a compilation of 4 books that have sold more than 500,000 copies worldwide put together. And this book that I'm doing right now is called What Uncle Sam Really Wants. And this book is very interesting because it sets out to really put it all out there of what is really happening in American foreign policy, and he calls a spade as a spade. The different chapters of the book. First part of the book talks about how the US perceives itself to dominate the whole world, and how even after the World War, it took Nazi generals, Nazi pro-Nazi perpetrators, and put them in different parts of the world so that they could do the American bidding. And that is something really hidden from the world, but nobody really realizes. It looks at the world as a three-sided contest, a triangular world where US, Japan and Germany are the 3 major powers that are trucking the world economy to move on, and where Japan and Germany are both under US supervision per se. It also talks about how the US treats its neighbors in the rest of the world. They have cited instances from El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Panama, and a lot of Southeast Asia too. Most of these places had something to do with the agro-export model, which actually saw a rise in the gross national product of a particular country, but where the people of the country still starved to death. When a revolution started and when people started dissenting against this kind of model, the first thing that the US would do is use the police state, use the police as a form of oppression, and put down the revolution, put down the dissenting voices. If the police didn't work, they would use the army. If the army didn't work, then they would overthrow the whole government. Noam Chomsky says that every US president in the last 100 years can be tried for perpetrating war crimes against humanity. The CIA actually has trained murder squads in all these countries, which have killed over 200,000 people in Central America alone. So the US backed murders is around 250,000. So that's a big number that we don't really realize, and we look at the US as a source of democracy in the world, which is exactly against what it does. It is the source of terror. What the US does in the other sense, other than training squads to control countries that do not fall in line, they impose sanctions and they fund these movements called contras, which they portray as the liberation movement of the particular country. Like what they're doing in Syria currently, they are funding, they are arming and feeding the rebels, and they are portraying the rebels as the people who want freedom, who are the good people, and Assad as the bad person, which is not always the truth. It might not always be the truth. I mean, before I go any further, I would like to say that I'm neither for or against this notion, but I'm just putting out the facts that are there in the book, and I'm not taking any sides here. The book also says that about the Gulf War, where actually Saddam Hussein wanted a peaceful resolution to the conflict, and the Americans didn't want that peaceful resolution to the conflict. So the America actually blocked all avenues for a peaceful resolution of Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. But then what happened was they were left with no choice, and war was the only option after a point of time. Then it also talks about America's one-sided war on certain drugs and not all of them. It's very weird because he also shows facts and figures which say that tobacco and alcohol deaths are approximately over 400,000 in America, but the deaths due to marijuana is about 3,500 only. And it's an irony where American tobacco companies were urging America to impose sanctions on Thailand, which was stopping or reducing the imports of tobacco from America in their anti-tobacco movement. And at the same time, America was urging other countries to stop the flow of cocaine and marijuana into America. So you are trying to stop one drug and yet permitting others, which is completely a hypocritical thing to do. The book also goes on to talk about what America terms as democracy. Democracy, according to Noam Chomsky, is the decisions actually that are taken by large conglomerates, and the people have no real role to play in it. By free enterprise, when America says free enterprise, he says that they actually mean public subsidy and private profit. It's a very interesting term. Public subsidy, private profit. The book also talks about how the word socialism and socialist has been vilified by America because they portray Lenin's model of socialism, which is not really socialism. Because as soon as the revolution happened and Lenin came to power, Lenin's socialism is actually an oxymoron because it actually destroyed all social institutions that were mushrooming and led to the revolution. And the US is holding on to that definition and portraying all of socialism and all of socialist causes as a vilified form of governance. So they don't really look at liberal socialist institutions. They don't want to even consider that. They just vilify one particular word because it is to their benefit. And that is how the Democrats and Republicans have been positioned, because the Democrats, who are more tending towards pro-people and they have a particular agenda, they are looked upon as they having a specified agenda. They want to take care of needs of minorities, of women, of institutions that are equal and provide labor equality, like the current Obama bill. But the Republicans are actually the ones who uphold national interest, according to American Republicans, because they supposedly they have managed to portray national interest as the interest of large conglomerates, as the interest of free enterprise, and that is where it's all wrong. He also talks about the doctrinal media, the doctrine of the media, where he says that 20% of the population is the educated population that can understand what is happening. The other 80% of the population is a passive kind of population, the one that needs to be led, that one that allows itself to be led. And the mass media actually targets that 80% and sends images and inculcates values of passivity, values of in hyper individualism, of greed, of putting oneself above others. It the popular media actually portrays and inculcates these values in the 80% of the people, but the 20% of the people aren't doing anything about it. And that is why there is no possibility of real revolution happening in America as of now. Look at how they handle the Occupy Wall Street movement. It's very interesting. When the movement started, all media coverage was diverted from it. It got initial media coverage, but then it was shifted away. And he shows in a way how systematically America has really destroyed several countries, including Vietnam, where they completely sent forces, where they were trying to control the revolution, and when they couldn't, they had to send forces. And they portrayed the forces as the saviors of the people, whereas it was completely the other case around, which is why they lost so badly in Vietnam. So with this, there's a lot more that we can keep talking about, whether this was right or this was wrong, but all in all, it's a very interesting book. I think definitely people should read it to understand what American agenda really is. Coming to us, how it affects us as individuals, as bureaucrats, is that we should understand this model of coercing people to do a particular thing, and we should analyze whether it's happening to us in the way we consume things, the way we consume gold, the way we consume fairness advertisement, our obsession with all of this. Is it something that is it come to a situation where we are allowing large corporations to actually control the way we live our lives? And we should try to break out of that. As bureaucrats, we should also remember that there's a vested interest in these large processes, especially a process like war. And we should consider all these things when, suppose in a country like India, if we are having ambitions of becoming a global assertive power, we should also ensure that what we do is within the limits of morality. But we should also know that if there are dissenting voices, we should know how to deal with those dissenting voices. So a lot of fingers can be pointed at either way, but I think it's very important to understand this line of thinking at least, because it's very beneficial in looking at the world at a completely different perspective. So though he may be called the leftist and the biggest critic of America, I think Noam Chomsky is one of the most interesting and scintillating thinkers that I have ever come across. Not that I've come across so many, but from what little I have. So I will take your leave, and thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you get a chance to read this and discuss further. Thank you so much.